Hi, everyone, and welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Rosa Rountree. Rosa is National Operations Director for Atkins Realis in Orlando, Florida. Previously, she served in many other roles in tolling and transportation industries, including as CEO of Aegis, Executive Director of the State Road and Tollway Authority in Atlanta, Operations Manager for the Central Florida Expressway Authority, and many more. In and around all of that, Rosa worked with several industry consultants on important projects with Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, Delaware River and Bay Authority, the Washington Metro, transportation corridor agencies, and the list goes on and on. Rosa has served on the board of directors of IBTTA and in 2021 received the honorary member designation, the highest honor that IBTTA can bestow on an individual. Rosa, welcome to Cafe IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Pat. Thank you for this honor to just chat with you today.
You bet. I'm looking forward to it too. Well, today, a big shout out to all the speakers, moderators, exhibitors, sponsors, the chief meeting organizers, the meeting planning group, the IBTTA staff, and everyone else who's associated with the 91st IBTTA annual meeting and exhibition in Seattle. It kicks off with our board meeting and committee meetings on Friday, and it's followed by 4 more action-packed days of education, networking, and business development. We can't wait to see you there. Well, this is Cafe IBTTA, where we drink coffee and talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And we are taking your questions and comments, and we want to get started right away. Please, if you have a question or a comment, use the chat function and select everyone to ask Rosa a question. And I'm going to pose a question to get you all started here. I want you to think about where were you the first time you met Rosa? And if you can't remember back that far, where were you the last time you saw Rosa? So put this in the chat. I want to find out when and where people saw Rosa. All right, we got a Vancouver, Atlanta, all right, Baltimore. What else do we have here? Nashville, Orlando, Cleveland. Oh man, it's coming in. This is like a Johnny Cash song. I've been everywhere, man, huh? Atlanta, Nashville. Yeah. Keep them coming in. Ohio. You get around, Rosa. You don't, what do they say? No moss grows under that. No, what is it? A rolling stone gathers no moss, right?
I agree. I've been around.
You've been around. Well, so Rosa, let's talk a little bit about your origin story. When we talked before, you told me about the big influence that your parents had on your life. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your folks, your mom and dad, and the strength and the confidence that they instilled in you. Tell us about that.
Well, my parents were entrepreneurs with 7 children. So entrepreneurs with 7 children. In the 60s, they started the first owned minority business, a tire and repair company in Pensacola, Florida. It was named after my dad, Prince Tire Company. He started the company, Pat, because of unfair labor practices. In the 60s, you can only imagine. But they went on to expand their business to 3 facilities in 2 states. And like we see today with minority businesses, they were awarded numerous government contracts in Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. I watched them, Pat. I watched them overcome so many challenges, the 60s, the 70s, put their kids through college, but they never gave up. They were very resistant, very resilient, and they proved that we could do anything we wanted. We just have to believe in it. And so I truly believe that I can do anything I want to do if I have the passion, and that's what I want to do.
That's great. Now, I think your dad he was fond of slogans, wasn't he? And there was one particular slogan with the tire company that says something about his attitude toward people.
It's interesting because I'm known for my marketing and communication styles, and I truly believe it came from my parents. I feel like a little Mimi, like a mini me of my parents. My father's company was Prince Tire Company, again, named after him. He was our prince. And the theme or his slogan was King of the Road, right? If you had his tires, you were king of the road. In fact, I could hear the little jingle in my head today, right? And the reason he wanted everyone to feel like they were king of the road is because everyone in his mind was very privileged and everyone had the authority. So everyone was part of the road. And so I take that with me today. I look for those slogans that you can bring everyone in and make everyone feel special. And he did that throughout our community. He was very loved. My parents were very loved as they continued to spread what they knew. Again, I said they started with unfair labor practices, right? And so his commitment was making sure that others did not experience what he experienced. And so those of you who know me know that that's always my drive, making sure that there's fair and equitable opportunities for all. And so again, I feel like a little mini me of my parents because they instilled in me so much that I utilize today.
Now, that discrimination and those kinds of things that your parents experienced, maybe you didn't experience that to the same degree, but when you arrived as CEO of Aegis, you noticed that nobody looked like you. Tell us about that. What was that like, and how did you respond?
Well, it's interesting. It was one of the large annual meetings that they would fly in all the senior leadership people around the world. Right? Aegis is globally, right, nationally known for being one of the large 3P providers. Um, and I walked in and I noticed no one looked like me. There was no person of color and no women in leadership, and I felt alone. I felt like I felt many times as I've had this journey alone. Um, I think it's only human nature, Pat, that we want to be around folks who share a common experience and background as we do. I remember asking Pierre, he was the CFO, where were the women? Where were the other women? And his response, similar to what I had heard before, that they were trying it out. They were years behind. They were moving forward. They were but something clicked in me as I'm listening to him talking, looking around the room and hearing all the voices that weren't English, right, French and around the world. I realized that my supervisors, strangers, had used their credibility to advocate for someone they believed in, someone that they looked at their resume and hired for their experience and their track record, not their agenda, but took that leap. And so for me, failure was not an option. We had to succeed in delivering the first all electronic toll collections in British Columbia. And we did. And we did. And so I look back and think the loneliness was difficult at times. It drove me to work harder and continue to raise the bar. But I wanted to show that diversity and leadership strengthen the organizations. Overall, it was my experience that taught me that preservations, it fuels my passion for fostering inclusion. It's one of the things that, again, you've heard me say, we're better together when we include all. So I don't wish that feeling on anyone to feel alone. I love that at IBTTA, when we start our conferences, we always ask those first-time attendees to stand up because we don't want people to feel alone. And so it helps me understand the importance of when you have someone who doesn't look like you, who is in the room with you, to extend that courtesy to make them feel like they are a part of the conversation. So, yeah.
Rosa, thanks for those reflections about sort of integrating yourself in the Aegis culture and helping other people get along. Coaching and mentoring is a big topic here on Café IBTTA. And I remember you saying at one point, I'd like to be remembered for the people I've coached along the way. Tell us more. What does that mean to you?
So I've had a extensive little career. I started very young, Pat.
We know.
And so throughout my career, I've tried to provide, guidance and support, encouragement to those around me, whether they were my direct reports, my colleagues, or just emerging professionals. My goal has always been to help others reach their full potential. It's one of the things I look for as I'm looking at individuals. I see they aspire to have that extra connection, and I look for those opportunities. So when I see those I've coached have gone on to achieve great things in their career, it gives me that sense of fulfillment. Kind of feels like I've done a little bit of that, right? It enforces that by investing in the development of others, you create that positive ripple effect that can have exponential impact on people, on the world. If I can leave that type of legacy that I've inspired others, that is rooted in empowering others to grow and succeed, I think I've accomplished quite a bit. And again, just reflecting on my parents, this was a big part of what they were and who they did. We learned. They coached, they mentored, they watched others, and so I just carry that with me throughout my career. And if one day I'm not here, someone will say, I knew her. She helped me, right? And that's a pretty special legacy, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is Café IBTTA. Our guest today is Rosa Rountree. She's a National Operations Director for Atkins Realis. And we are taking your questions. Please use all panelists and attendees or everyone in the chat function. We'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, Rosa, you're a champion for a lot of causes in your extensive career. And you said a lot of my life is to champion a cause. In Georgia, at the State Road and Tollway Authority, I was the champion of managed lanes. Tell us about that experience.
The experience. I'm sure there are colleagues on the call that went through that walk with me, Pat. To say it was difficult is an understatement. It was odd. I arrived from Florida to Georgia because a mentor, sponsored, opened the door for me, gave me an opportunity. Could have been just as easy to be complacent and do business as usual. That's not my forte, as you know. And so I looked at what others thought may have been impossible, and for me to achieve what seemed impossible became possible. Obtaining that urban partnership grant was an opportunity for us to move Atlanta forward. I had a great team. And nothing you do ever is by yourself. And that's the first thing you have to know when you're going out in business or leadership, is that you're only as strong as those that are working with you, that are collaborating with you. And so David and Patrick Vu, Lisa Thompson, Janae Miller, they believed in this vision. They used to have this running story or joke that they would say, my visions were their nightmares. So, but as a champion, it was so important to build trust with my team, trust in alignment with others and stakeholders, like the Trucking Association. Pat, we had done studies on managed lanes, on hot lanes, and on tot lanes. And I recall meeting with Georgia Trucking Association, Ed Kroll, after our first truck-only toll lane study. It showed potential of why this would make sense to put truck-only toll lanes in Atlanta. So I went out and met with Ed several times, and I committed that the only way we would advance the project if the second, more in-depth study proved that it was beneficial to the truckers, that I would stand behind that, and I would ensure that was not put in place. But I needed his support, and I needed his participation, because we needed the trucking industry to be part of, to share their data with us, their salaries, of what it took, the travel time to go. And so we needed that. but we gained their respect through transparency. And as I shared, I was committed to not moving forward, and we didn't. The second study proved that it wasn't beneficial to the truckers, and so we did not put toll-only truck lanes in. But Pat, we brought everyone to the table, and that was challenging because again, I found myself being the only female around six. There were six transportation agencies, the DOT and the Planning Authority and the transit authorities that were there. There were six of us, and so being the only female, I remember being short. That little things you remember. I was short. They all felt like they were 6 feet and taller, and I would be in the room and I would be pursuing why this was so important and why we had to do this. And my team would just have all of this proof and evidence that I would show up to a meeting that if they said X, I had Y, that convinced them why this was so important. It worked. Being a champion requires preservation, perseverance. We have to collaborate, but we have to continue pursuing. And so I found that you have to appeal to not just their minds, but to their hearts if you truly want to change or transform the transportation region. And so I am so grateful. I don't know if they're on this call, but I am so grateful to my team who helped us move Atlanta forward. And Pat, honestly, seeing what I see in Atlanta now, I just bow down and pay homage to those who carried out what I believe, my vision, and made it a reality. So Chris Tomlinson, Janine Miller, Patrick Vu, I just, pay homage because it was truly a vision. It was my dream that they believed in and they carried it forward. And so I still want that road named after me, Janine.
Rosa, I love the idea of getting other people, encouraging other people to share your vision and bringing other people to the table. And it seems like you're never too young to be brought to the table with Rosa Rountree. And it makes me think of when you were working with Jim Ely at Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, you took a bunch of engineers out to an elementary school to visit a bunch of third graders. All right. What was that all about? What happened as a result of that?
Well, so that was, again, I love involving people. Children, my family. My family has supported me throughout this. I am, again, so blessed, so fortunate that I can do what I do because I have an incredibly supporting family. I just wish that for everyone. And so it's engineering week. Florida's Turnpike had partnered with a local neighboring elementary school. And as always, I share my work. I come home and share what's happening. And David, my husband, who you've met, had this great idea of how we could teach children about building a roadway, right? And using his HO scale racetrack. David had this racetrack since he was 8 years old. And once we were married, every year we'd buy him another track. So we'd add to it and add to it. And, now 40 years later, you can only imagine how large this track is, right? So at the time, I thought, great idea. I shared it with my colleagues at the Florida's Turnpike, and they all bought into it. So we arrived early at the school and built out this amazing track that in our mind was a simulation of the Florida's Turnpike. It was a 4-lane, and 2 of the lanes had SunPass. 2 of the lanes did not. And so the students would arrive and they'd see the track. And of course they were encouraged, they wanted to race, and we'd say no. And we'd ask questions, what type of job did you think it required to work at the Florida's Turnpike? And they'd all say, construction workers, or some would say engineers. And this was the third grader. So, you got an understanding of what they knew about the world they lived in at that time. And we would share, well, what about people who work in accounting and finance? And, they'd shake their heads. And then we would explain why, we have to fund these roads. We have to find money to fund the roads. And we went on to communications, how we have to inform the people, and marketing, how we had to make sure SunPass was marketed. And we looked at biochemistry and how the insects, the animals, we had to make sure that if we had to displace them, where they were going. It was a fascinating discussion with these kids. But when it was all done, the engineer shirt brought in the rebar and other construction materials that they could share with the kids for hands-on effect. But the main portion was, we want to race. And so they had to pull names and decide who went first and who was sun pass and who were not sun pass, and they all raced. And if you didn't have a sun pass, you had to stop. That we would count and say, okay, throw your coins in the bucket. And the kids with sun pass, of course, would race around and they would win if they could keep their car on the track. But they would win. And we did this for a few years. This went on. And even after I left the Florida's Turnpike, they continued. And so hopefully we influence some children out there to be engineers or to go in the field of transportation, because we understand it's not just engineers. It takes all of us to do what we do. And at the time, we were hoping we influenced kids to go home and tell their parents to get a sun pass, because it's faster and more efficient if you have electronic tolling than if you're stopping to pay tolls. But fun for all. And again, I always give praises to my family for all their support. Could not have done that without David and his racetrack. So anyway, so yeah, that was our experience, and continuing to do things like that, Pat.
I love the notion that you're teaching the young people that it isn't just engineers and construction people at the tollway. It's accountants and marketing people, et cetera. And, during your career, you've got to make some decisions about, where you're going to go. And I remember a story you told me about Hal Worrell when you were at Orlando Orange County Expressway Authority together. And he asked you a pointed question. It was, do you want to do accounting or do you want to be in charge of things? And you had to make a decision.
It was, it's interesting. Hal has been such an influence in my life, and I don't know that he said that every time I see him, I remind him of things that he actually challenged or gave me these tasks that in any given point in time, Pat, I probably would have said, no, I'm not ready. And many of my mentors have heard me say, not ready for that yet. And it's because of their encouragement that I pursue, or because they open a door. And when you open that door, it's hard to say no when the door is open, right? And you pursue. But this particular question actually came from George Figueredo. I don't know where George is today, but I don't know that he knows the impact that he had on my life at that time. So I had been hired as a temporary assignment. David had just retired from the military, and we had moved to Orlando so I could be in the community with my family. My sister and was here, and other family members. And so as a temporary accountant, I came in to reconcile. They were starting the e-pass. It was new implementation coming in, and things had to be reconciled. That's what you do. Reconcile it from the system to the general ledger and eventually to the bank account. And I knew they were planning to hire an accounting manager for that role, the e-pass accounting manager, and I had planned to apply for it. But along the way, I'd made some pointed notions to what they should be doing. If this is truly service, and service is about this, always challenging for me not to share my thoughts with people. And so as I'm sharing my thoughts, a position had posted for the e-pass operations manager, which I had not a plan to apply for. I was waiting for the next position to be posted. And George noticed that I hadn't applied, and he asked me a simple question. Did I want to continue reconciling, or did I want to be in charge of the reconciliation decisions? And it was an easy decision at that point onward. Whenever given the opportunity to be in charge, I accept. And so I did. I accepted the opportunity. And from that point on, George created what he calls is the little monster, or he used to call me, we used to tease, and I'd say, if I were queen of the world, here's what I do. So George, thank you for challenging me to look beyond what I thought I could do and allowing me to move forward. And of course, you know the story. I interviewed with Hal, and Hal, of course, hired me after discussing the weather in Germany and all kinds of things to see if I fit his culture, because he was looking for someone. He knew I could do the job, but if I fit the culture of the agency. And so the story is known. I was hired, and today I am the National Operations Director for Atkins Realis. So yeah,
Good things
sure.
come, good things happen when you say yes to certain things, right?
That's correct.
We've got a question here from Mary Salick. What advice do you have for women in tolling that are looking to break the glass ceiling within the tolling industry? What's the best way for us to help young women advance in their careers?
Well, the first, hey Mary, good to see you. Mary, of course, was there in Georgia while I was there doing some crazy things and pushing the boundaries. So thank you, Mary, for supporting Georgia and continuing to support Georgia. What I say to everyone, Mary, is be willing to accept the yes, right? Be willing to accept that door when it opens. Most times, we don't think we're ready. Um, it's interesting how women really do assess when they look at a job description and say, 85% I know I can do. The other 15%, I will need some support. I may wait for that opportunity. Where I've noticed that when I interview men and they go through and they're like, man, I can do 100%, even though I only have 50% of the skills, or maybe 85%. And so the one thing we have to do is, and I do this all the time, well, I'll say I'm not ready. And my mentors will shove me. Yes, you are. Go do this. Right. So the first thing, we have to be ready to accept the assignment. The other, as women, and men, not just women, don't just be a mentor, be a sponsor. Open that door. Every opportunity I've had, Mary, is because someone opened a door for me. Not just a mentor. Mentors guide you, help you, support you. Sponsors open doors. George Figueredo opened the door for me to move to Lockheed Martin. Many things had transpired, and they didn't call me. They called George for the job to go to Lockheed Martin. And George said, I'm not interested, but you should talk to this young lady. And they did, and I was hired. When I was at Lockheed, many things happened, 9/11. And through that process, 9/11, I wanted to come home. And so I called a lot of friends, a lot of mentors. And Jim Ely opened the door and said to Max Crummet, you need to hire her, right? And so I applied and I was hired to work as a consultant. First time as a consultant. And so it continued throughout my career, is that my sponsors have opened doors and I've said yes and walked through those doors and then just deliver. So Mary, it takes more than one individual to break the ceiling. I shared my story about when I went to Aegis, an international firm. Someone used their credibility for me to hire me. It was an organization that didn't have women in leadership, but they were willing to use their credibility because of what they saw in my resume to hire me. It takes more than one person for us to break the ceiling. It takes all of us. It's a community. Together, we've proven that women in leadership is better for our community than just having one group of men driving it. So I encourage us all on this call to be sponsors to those who are looking to break the glass ceiling.
Beautiful. Amen, Rosa. Love that story. Rosa, I'm going to make a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to come back to you for some final words of wisdom. So don't forget to complete the survey at the end of today's Café IBTTA. We always like to hear what you're thinking about. And coming up, we have meetings October 7 through 10, just later this week, IBTTA's annual meeting and exhibition in Seattle. There's still time to register. We'd love to see you there. October 27th at 12 p.m., we have a webinar, The Mobility Wallet and Equitable Access to Transportation. Then November 12 through 14 in Athens, Greece is our Global Tolling Summit. Check the IBTTA website for details on all of our in-person and virtual meetings. Well, Rosa, what final words of wisdom do you have before we sign off today?
Pat, Margaret Mead said it best. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So, to the group today, be the change, make a difference.
Beautiful. Rosa, thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in Seattle. And to all our viewers, be safe, keep in touch, and I'll see you down the road.